Good morning and welcome back to the channel. Today the subject is some interesting things I found out when I bought this new crescendo. Well, if you've followed my channel a while, you know I've had a few of these. And this one was purchased as the result of an unfortunate incident at my flying field a few days ago. And it turned out that the issues were so serious that the repair costs for new fuselage, new wing set, because I broke this bracket and you have to buy the wings to get the bracket. A few other parts was going to be prohibitive, or at least to the point where I could, by selling the receiver out of the old airplane on eBay, which I listed and it's already sold. The bidding's not done yet, but I have a high enough bid, I'm sure it's going to sell. The money I'll make off of that will about be the difference between repairing this one or the old one and buying this one. So didn't make sense really to spend a lot of time working on the crashed crescendo. And in the process, when I put this one together, this crescendo here, I discovered something that I actually was not aware of, and that is that E-flite / Horizon / Spektrum have made some changes in the bind and fly version of this that comes with the AR637TA, which is a programmed version of the AR637T, but does not have the altimeter variometer that the 637T has. So I've got this new crescendo all set up. I've put in my telemetry altimeter is installed here, and here is my GPS out of the old model, and the battery was even salvaged. And this has to do with the setup and forward programming of SAFE and AS3X, which many of you may recall at one time you had to set up using this stick combination on your transmitter and flipping a switch, say the A switch under here, back and forth a bunch of times, and hoping that you'd get the AS3X / SAFE beeps and control movements indicating that you had selected switch A as your safe mode switch. Well, that's all changed now. I don't know when this change happened, but I was delighted to find out it had. In that they have unlocked the safe select settings in the newer AR637TA so that you now have that setting accessible through forward programming, and that is about the only setting you can change through forward programming. There are many, many others if you unlock the TA version, and that's why this guy is here. This has the AR637T, and I'm going to show you the other options that are available with the T version that is totally unlocked, and you have to program it yourself. The nice thing about the TA version is that it is programmed with the receiver orientation, gains and limits all set for SAFE. Now, if you take a TA out of one of these models and put it in another one, you've basically got two choices. You can not set up SAFE or AX3X and use it like we used to fly models 30 years ago, all totally manual, and it'll work fine. That's kind of a waste of money though, because you can buy a much less expensive receiver without AX3X and SAFE from Spektrum or other vendors and put it in that model and achieve the same thing. So yeah, you can do that, but you know, why not just buy a cheaper receiver and use the AR637TA in a model where you want SAFE and AX3X to work. So what I'm going to do is turn off the video here and put my receiver or transmitter here down on the table and show you some settings using these two receivers in these two very different, very different airplanes. And it is very different in terms of the options that you have available with the T model versus the TA model. You have many more options available. Another way of putting that is you have many more options to totally screw things up if you're not careful. And I'm going to put some links in the description to the complete setup for the T and the unlocked TA. Basically, the unlocked TA is set up just like the unlocked T. It has, I think, pretty much all the same options for AX3X and SAFE that if you look at the T model in here, detailed setup videos, and they are quite detailed. You'd set up the unlocked TA just like those. And I also put in a link to a video on how to unlock the TA and turn it into an AR637T but without, again, the altimeter and variometer. Both of those receivers have the same telemetry capabilities and both work very well. But if you want to, like a sailplane here, I wanted an altimeter variometer in it, so I purchased that little unit from Spektrum, and it does a great job. Let me think, is there anything else? I think that's about it. So I'm going to cut off here, and I'm going to go set up for looking at the transmitter and show you first how to set up this TA for just SAFE and AX3X, and then I'll put a battery on this 4-star 64 with the T model in it and show you the additional options that are available if you unlock the TA. So here we go. Let's start with the Conchindo. It's selected on the transmitter, I have a battery plugged in, it's ready to fly, except the battery's not charged. It may get a battery warning. You may notice that my switch D has the stem missing. Unfortunate incident that caused that to break off. This was throttle cut, now I just moved all the throttle cuts on all the models to switch C right next door, which was unused on this transmitter for any of my models. Let's talk briefly about what AS3X and SAFE do, because they are very different functions. SAFE is a self-leveling function. If you turn SAFE on, the model is going to attempt to get right side up and in level flight. If you want to turn right, you can turn right, but you're bank limited. Turning right and left, it will not go inverted. You can set different limits. If you have an unlocked receiver, you can change these bank limits, but you can't roll it and you can't loop it. You can change the pitch limits as well. In AS3X, you're going to be in a mode where the gyros attempt to stabilize for turbulence. You're otherwise free to do anything you want. You can roll it right, roll it left, loop it, do an outside loop. You can do this. Most models will give you a nice spin. This sailplane doesn't do that. You can really get a model spinning doing this, power off spin. And you can do inverted flat spins and all kinds of stuff I don't really know how to do. Anyway, so to set up these three modes on a three-way switch, all we have to do is go down here to System Setup, go down to F mode setup. I'm going to set up 3 flight modes on switch B. Back here, you can change that just by highlighting it and set it on a 2-position switch A. You can set it on switch C, which for me is throttle cut. I can set it over here, any of the switches. So I'm going to leave it on B, go back up 1 level, go down 2 clicks to channel assign. So we have to have a channel. This is an NX8, it's got 8 channels, plus I think it's got another phantom channel you can use. And I'm going to use AUX2 because that's generally an open channel. You can't change throttle, aileron, elevator, rudder, or gear on this one. In gear, actually you can change gear, but I use generally AUX2 for this, and it's going to be set to the same switch that I selected in the previous step. So now I've got 3 flight modes set up on switch B. So what do I want to do with those flight modes? Well, there's a lot of options as to what you can do with those flight modes in an unlocked receiver, but this one's not unlocked. So you can do mixes, you can do all kinds of stuff. You can, oops, let's go back. You can do, let's see, all kinds of things with mixes and flight modes. But what we want to mess around with here is forward programming. And with this locked version, you're very limited as to what you can do with these settings. I don't want you messing with the factory settings that I'll show you with the T model here in a little bit. I'm going to go to gyro settings, safe select, and I've got these 3 positions set up as follows. Flight mode 3, you have to select the channel, which is AUX2, remember, which is assigned to switch B. And I've got AS3X and safe both turned off. Safe select, though, is turned on. I can turn that off, I can turn it on. If I turn it off here, basically I don't have the option of setting up safe on any flight mode. Now, if you wanted to take this receiver out and put it in a different model, you could program it here with safe select off. And remember, we're programming the receiver. If you set up safe select off and put it in another transmitter, another airplane, you can probably, I haven't tested this, you can probably fly that airplane without AS3X and without safe. But if you want to do that, why not get a cheaper receiver? So I'm going to turn this back on and go back to safe select. Okay, now we're going to do the next position is the middle position on the switch. Again, it's on AUX2, and I've turned AS3X on. I can turn it off. That's the same as the first position we looked at. So that turns on just AS3X. Now, flight mode 1 is also on AUX2, and here safe is on. Now, what's happened here is that the model, or the receiver knows right now that already I have selected position 2 for AS3X. So the only option I have left as far as this programming is concerned is to turn safe on. So I don't really have, you won't even have to program this, because if you scroll down here, you see that you can't turn safe off here. You can only turn safe select off, which then disables this 3-position switch. With this version, you cannot turn safe on and AS3X on at the same time. This is limited by the programming that Horizon has put into the TA version of the 637. That is not true if you unlock this receiver and have full access to all the programming options. But this is the only thing you can do with forward programming in this version of the locked TA version. But it is very, very handy if you want to use flight stabilization modes, because it only takes a few minutes to set up and it is dead reliable. But it is very limited in terms of what you can do. Now, other things are not. You can change all the other DR expos, you can change some servo setups, you can reverse servos, which I don't advise, but you can do it if necessary. So if we go over here to reverse, you'll see that none of these servos are reversed, but sometimes when you move a receiver into a different model, one of the servos may need to be reversed. I've had that happen. That's a whole nother subject. Again, if you move this thing to another model, you're going to want to unlock it and make sure everything works. You cannot reprogram the transmitter and receiver for a reverse servo unless you unlock it. Okay, back to the main screen, and now I'm going to take a second here, turn this off, and set up my 4Star64 T version of the 637 and show you the additional options that are available if you unlock the TA. Okay, we've got the 4Star64 powered up. We have it selected on the transmitter. And we're going to go take a look at forward programming on this model. So to do that, all I need to do is go down here to forward programming. And you'll notice immediately I've got other settings and gyro settings. And behind those two menus, I have a lot more choices than I had with that TA. So let's go to gyro setting now. You'll see here that this looks very different. Have a system setup, flight mode setup, safe settings, AX3X settings, and I have provided a link in the description to these settings in a very detailed video in terms of what you can do. So this is where you go, F mode setup for setting up safe. So I'm in flight mode 3 on the switch, and you'll see that AS3X is inhibited, safe is inhibited. All those panic, which is, you can set up your bind knob, push button up here, not knob, but push button as a panic mode, push that to go into safe. High throttle to pitch, low throttle to pitch. You can, there are all kinds of other things you can set up on these flight modes. But flight mode channel is switch B on AUX 2. I had to set that up manually as well, but this is not about that. Come on. There, okay, back to there. I don't do this very often, so excuse me for that little interruption. So now I'll switch down here. Flight mode 2, the center position on the switch, and AS3X is active. And I can turn that off and back on. Down here, AS3X is inhibited. I can turn it on, but I don't think it has much effect because down here I have self-level angle turned on. This is the mode. There is another mode called envelope and another mode. Oh, I'm sorry, no there's not. Oh, inhibited, I can turn it off. I can turn it to self-level. Now this is, if I go back up to, whoops, wait a minute. Go back up here and inhibit AS3X. This is exactly the way the Crescendo was set up. You can turn on AS3X here. I don't know why you would want to do that, because safe mode does the same thing in straight and level flight as AS3X. So I just leave it turned off. So if we go back here, here is where we would change our AS3X gains, priority, gain sensitivity, fixed adjustables. I can set up variable gains on one of my trim switches if I want to. The two trim switches up here. No, I'm sorry, these trims up here. No, don't want to mess with those. We wouldn't want to do that. I can set it up on the rotating knob up here so that I can change my gains by rotating that knob, which is very handy if you want to adjust these in flight. If you set the gains too high, the model is going to wobble, especially as it picks up speed and you get into some turbulence. So you may want to, when you're setting up a model, you may want to take it out and fly it and start out with 0 gains on the AS3X and turn it up until the model starts to wobble, then back it off, come back down. You can see those gains here, and then you can set them permanently and go back to using this rotating knob for your volume control if you want to. I've not had a model yet that really had to have that level of programming. They all seem to work pretty well on the factory defaults. And then there's system setup. This is where if you put this receiver in a different airplane, you're going to want to relearn servo settings. You're going to want to set the orientation. This particular model has the receiver mounted upside down under the canopy because there was no other place to put it. So the orientation had to be changed, obviously from the factory default. We can change, this is where we can set variable gains. We can also do safe panic mode setup, and there's some utilities in here. But you can already see that there is a lot more settings available in forward programming here than were available in the TA version for the Crescendo. Again, if you want to really dig into all these settings, I've got a very complete video linked to, or not linked to, but in the description of this video that you can go to and go through all of the settings and what they do and things you can do with them. And then past that, there's a whole other level of things you can do with mixes and flight modes and switches, and oh my gosh, it's unbelievable what you can do with these models these days when you get into some of the advanced settings. So have a great summer. Hope to see you back here on the channel sometime in the future. If you like this video, please press a like. I don't make any money off of that. Don't make any money off of anything on this. Is purely for fun, but it does give me some encouragement. And if you have any comments, I would point out there was a previous version of this video that came out that got some comments that caused me to redo it. So now I would like to thank those people who commented, because they helped me understand some additional things that I did not fully appreciate about how you set all this up. So goodbye and good luck with your flying this summer.